Many Linux users are stopped from using Arch Linux because they cannot install it. This Arch Linux installation guide will solve this problem. I will show you the whole Arch Linux installation process step by step. First of all, you need to check the internet connection. I recommend you to use wired internet connection, and to check if it works, you just need to ping any website. For example, you can ping archlinux.org. I am able to ping that website, this means my internet connection works. If you are using Wi-Fi, you need to configure it using IWCTL. You will get into interactive prompt of IWCTL. First you need to list all the available devices, and you should see your Wi-Fi available with a name like WLAN0. So use it to scan for all the networks. So this command doesn't output anything, this is normal. So next you need to list all the available Wi-Fi networks in your location. So now you can see on the screen the Wi-Fi networks which are available in my location, and one of them is my home Wi-Fi. I use its name to connect to it. I need to enter my passphrase. So I see no errors, this means I have connected successfully. So now I can exit from this IWCTL prompt and test my Wi-Fi connection again. Now it works. I hope you will get your Wi-Fi working as well. The next step in our Arch Linux installation guide is to partition our hard drive. First we need to list all the available hard drives and their partition. And to do that you can use the command fdisk with option L. As you can see, it shows me that there are two hard drives available. One of them is my actual hard drive and another one my Arch Linux installation media. So I'm going to use the hard drive which is called dev.sda, which is a 30 gigs. This is a test machine, so that's why it's so small. And to do that I use the command cfdisk and type the name of my device, dev.sda. As you can see, it is already partitioned. But if your hard drive is not partitioned, you can partition it from the scratch. Let me show you how to do it. First, let's delete all the partitions here. Here you need to use the arrow keys on your keyboard and enter key to make an action. For example, I have selected the partition SDA2, then I selected delete at the bottom of this screen and press enter to delete it. Now all the partitions are removed from my hard drive. And I need to create a new partition table. To do that I click on this new and I give the size to this partition. This is gonna be Arch Linux EUFI installation. That's why I need to create EFI partition. To do that we can give it 512 megabytes. Okay, this created. Then I select the rest of the space and allocate it for root. You can also create a home partition here as well. Actually, let's do it. Let's give 15 gigs for our root partition and the rest will be our home partition. Everything is created. Now we need to write this partition table to our hard drive. I select write at the bottom of the screen as you can see and press enter. Then I need to confirm it. Okay, it's done. Now I press quit. After I exit from my partition table, I can press Ctrl L to clean this screen and check my partition table again. For that I just press the arrow key up, which will show me the previously typed command. Press again and then it will give me fdscale command. And now you can see I have 3 partitions in my SDA hard drive, so we need to format them. The first partition is gonna be our EFI partition and it needs to be formatted with FAT32 file system. To do that you need to type the command mkfs.fat, it's gonna be 32, and then the name of this partition, SDA1. Okay, it is formatted, nice. And the other 2 partitions can be formatted with the file system ext4. I format this partition and I format the other one as well. So now the partitions are formatted, we can clean our screen again. Now we need to mount our new partitions to our Arch Linux installation ISO to be able to install any files on these partitions. And first we're gonna mount our root partition. For that you type the command mount, then you type what you want to mount. That will be dev sda2. This is our root partition. And it will be mounted to MNT. Okay, it is mounted. Since we also have a home partition, we need to mount it as well. And if you are a little bit familiar with Linux, you know that your home partition is usually mounted some sort of on top of your root partition. So our root is mounted to MNT, so we need to mount home to home in MNT. And to do that, we need to create a home folder. So you type mkdir. This is a command to create a new directory. MNT home. The directory is created, and now we just need to mount our home partition, which is SDA3, to this MNT home folder. So both our root partition and our home partitions are mounted. We will also mount our EFI partition, but that's gonna happen later. And you may ask me why you don't have any swap partition here. And I have a dedicated video about swap partition and swap files, and I recommend to use swap file, which we're gonna create later during this installation. So to check the mounting points, you can use the command lsbok, and you can see our SDA2 is mounted to MNT and SDA3 is mounted to MNT home. Everything is fine. Now we can start installing our system. To do that, you need to use the command which is called pikestrap. We will use option I. Everything is gonna be installed to MNT, and we're gonna install packages base. We're gonna make very minimal installation at this stage, and we will build up our system as we go. We also need to install our kernel, Linux, also Linux firmware. I also like to install sudo at this stage because many new users are used to use sudo command, so it's nice to have it. And we also need to have any text editor, and my personal choice is nano editor, which is very simple editor. So let's install all these packages, and to do that just press enter. If you ask any questions, I recommend you to proceed with the default choice, so just press enter again. Confirm. While these packages have been installed, I would like to introduce you the sponsor of this video, ThinLinc. ThinLinc is the best program for remote Linux desktop access, in my opinion. ThinLinc's remote access is almost indistinguishable from local experience. Everything works fast and smoothly, as if you were sitting in front of your remote computer. You can connect remotely from anywhere using a web browser or using a ThinLinc client if you want optimized performance. It works on Linux, Mac, and Windows. Installation of ThinLinc takes a few clicks. Everything is automatic, including configuring a firewall. I have a detailed video on how to install and use ThinLinc in Ubuntu. ThinLinc is especially great in the server-based infrastructure by providing secure and reliable remote access to Linux desktops with redundancy, load balance, and high availability for multi-user support. If you are a server administrator, you would definitely appreciate all these features. Try ThinLinc, I believe you will like it. ThinLinc is based on the open source software, and it is free for up to 10 concurrent users. I provide the link in the description. Hopefully the installation will be complete without any errors, and you can proceed to the next step. And the next step will be to generate fstab file. You need to type the command gen fstab with the option u, p, it's gonna be mnt, and we will generate it to a file which is located in mnt atc fstab, and press enter. But make sure you have two signs here, so you don't overwrite this file, but you just add information to it. Okay, fstab is generated. You can also check its content if you want. To do that, you type the command cat mnt atc fstab. Here it is. We have two partitions, our root partition and our home partition. In some sense, installation is kind of complete, but I know that for new users it still looks confusing. But we can also now jump or log in into our newly installed system, which is called in Arch system to do chroot. Type the command arch chroot, and then we will chroot into MNT. This is where our system is mounted, and this is where we have installed our Arch Linux system. And we're gonna use bash environment for that. Press enter, and now you can see the first line of your bash command has changed a bit. So this means you are now in your newly installed Arch Linux system. So you don't need to go to MNT anymore, because you're already in MNT folder where you have mounted your system. And you can start doing some configuration right here. We're gonna do some few essential configurations before we install our graphical desktop environment. And the first thing we need to do is to set our locale. To do that, you need to type the command nano. Then you go to file which is located at atc locale.gen, press enter. And here you will see all the locales which are available in your system. You need to find the locale which you're gonna use. At this stage, I recommend you to use just American English language and UTF-8 encoding system. And to do that, you need to press Ctrl W and type n_US and press enter. And Nano will find that string in your file, which is here, as you can see. And you need to remove this DS in front of it. You need to press Ctrl O to write the file and then press enter, and Ctrl X to exit. Let's clean this screen. After we have selected what locale we want to use, we need to generate it. And to do that, you type the command locale gen and press enter. English US UTF-8 locale has been generated. You need to add this locale also to your locale config file. To do that, you need to use the command echo. Then we're gonna use language set to English US dot UTF-8, close the quotes, and add this information to atc locale.conf. So the locale is set. Now we can also set our time zone, and to do that you need to type the command ln with option sf. So we're gonna create a symbolic link, and the symbolic link will use the files which are located in USR, share, zone info, and here you need to press tab 2 times and to see available zones and select your zone. In my case it is Europe. Then I press tab 2 times again, and then I see the list of cities available in Europe zone. And in my case it's gonna be Stockholm. So I have selected the locale which I wanna generate, and this locale needs to be placed into atc local time. We can also make sure that our clock is synced correctly. To do that, you need to type the command hwclock with option sys tohc, and it's gonna be UTC. Press enter. So now the clock has been synced. We just need to check what it is now, and you should see the correct time on your screen right now, which is correct for me. Next, we need to set our host name. To do that, you just type the command echo, and then you give a name to your computer. For example, it can be Arch PC or whatever you want. And this name is going to be placed to atc host name. Okay, we also need to add it to the file which is called hosts. To do that, we type nano atc hosts. And here you need to type these 3 lines. And it's your host name, which is RHPC in my case. After you have typed these 3 lines, press Ctrl O, enter to write the changes, and Ctrl X to exit. In addition to this video, I also have a dedicated blog post where you have all these details in text version, so I leave the link to that article in the description. You can go and also see all these commands and everything what you need for Arch Linux installation. This video is more for demonstration purposes, while all the details will be available in that article, including this host file. So now we have created our host file. The next step will be to configure our network. For the beginners, I think Network Manager is a good option, especially if you're gonna use GNOME or KDE desktop environment. So we need to install it. To do that we type pacman with option S, which is used for the installation, and network manager, this is the package name. Install it, say yes. And then you just need to enable it. To do that you type systemctl enable network manager. So now network manager is enabled. Let's clean this screen. Now we can set the password for our root user on this newly installed Arch Linux system. To do that you type passwd and type your password. When you type it you see nothing. So just type it, press enter, then repeat it and press enter. So when the password is installed, we can also start installing our bootloader. For the bootloader there are several options available. You can see all of them on Arch Linux wiki. And from this table you may already guess that group seems to be the most universal one because it has all these features listed in this table. I believe it is the best option for the new users. So let's install it. To do that we need to install the packages group and EFI boot mgr. Again we use a command pacman here. Press enter, confirm. When these packages are installed, we need to mount our EFI partition. Remember, we created it at the very beginning. We mounted our root partition, we mounted our home partition, but we didn't mount our EFI partition. And to mount it, we need to create a folder for it. mkdir, it's gonna be boot. We don't need to type mnd anymore. EFI folder. And we're gonna mount dev sda1 into this newly created folder, which is boot EFI. And we can check ls blk our mounting options, and we can install our group. Type the command group install. We're gonna use target x86_64 EFI. Then we're gonna use option bootloader ID, and the ID will be group. Next we need to specify our EFI directory. It's gonna be boot EFI. And optionally you can also say that it's gonna be removable and press enter. Again, all these commands are available in the text version of this tutorial. So very nice, no errors reported, group has installed correctly. Now we also need to create a configuration file for this grub installation. You need to type grub mkconfig, and this configuration file will be written into boot group.cfg. This is a configuration file. Press enter. It has written this configuration file, and during this process it has also identified some of the images already available on my system. So everything looks correctly at the moment. Hopefully the system has been installed successfully. What we can do now, we can reboot and boot into newly installed Arch Linux system. We don't have a graphical environment yet, it's only the command line, but it's a good stage to check if your installation has been successful. If it is, then we can proceed with the graphical desktop environment installation. You need to type exit to exit from the chroot session. So now we are in Arch Linux ISO session. Next you can also unmount all the mounted devices in the mnt folder and reboot. During the reboot, make sure you have removed your Arch Linux installation ISO and boot from the hard drive. And after that you should see your host name in the login prompt, which is ArchPC in my case. This is what I created during my installation. So we don't have any users yet except the root user. So for login you type root and the password which you created during the passwd command. And hopefully you will also log in into a newly installed Arch Linux system. So in terms of Arch Linux classification, you have installed Arch Linux at the moment. But I know that for many new users, since you don't have graphical desktop environment, the installation is not complete. So we're gonna solve that problem right now. But before we proceed with the installation of a graphical desktop environment, we need to create a swap file, and we also need to create our user. So let's start with the swap file. To do that, type dd if equal dev 0, so it will write zeros, and that will be written to our swap file, which is located in our root. ds equal 1 megabase. Count, this is where you need to specify the size of your swap file. Usually you can also make a swap file which is equal to your RAM memory, but I think 3 gigs is the most reasonable number for most people. We will type 3064 because it's in megabases, and status progress. Press enter. Now the file is created. We need to change its permission with the command chmod 0600 swap file. Now we need to format it to a swap file, and we need to activate it. And the last step, we need to add this swap file to our fstab file. To do that, type the command echo. It's gonna be swap file with option none, swap, defaults, space 0, close the quotation mark, place a double sign to add it to fstab file. Don't overwrite your fstab file. etc fstab. You can also use the command free m to see if your swap is available, and it is, as you can see on my screen right now. So the next step is to create a regular user now, because for the moment you only have root user. Use the command user add with option m, with option g, users. So the main group is gonna be users group, and also the additional group will be wheel. So we're gonna use bash environment for this user, and the username in my case will be LU, which is short for average Linux user, but you can use your username here. Press enter. So the user is created. Now you need to assign a password to this user. We use passwd command again, and the username after this command. Type your password twice, and the password is set. Now you have a regular user. You may also want to use this user with a sudo rights. To do that, you also need to add it to the vsudo group. Type editor equal nano vsudo. It's a specific way to edit this sudo file. In this file you need to scroll down until you find the line which is called wheel 000. Here it is. When you uncomment this line, it allows all members of the group wheel to execute any command. And this is what we're gonna do. Press Ctrl O to write these changes, and Ctrl X to exit nano editor. So now we have created a regular user. Let's log out from our root session and try to log in as a regular user. To do that, just type command exit or press Ctrl D. So use your username, which is LU in my case, and the newly created password. I have to log in as a regular user. So we are very close to the end of this installation, and now we can start installing some key packages and graphical desktop environment. So since we added our user to the sudo group, we can type the command sudo, and then we can use the command pacman. So I will install pause audio and pause audio also. For the Windows system, I'm gonna use Xorg, and this is what I recommend for new users. I know that many of you would ask me, why don't you install Wayland? Wayland is great, it's more modern of course, but not all programs still work really well with Wayland, and some of them don't work at all or require additional configuration. So I believe for new users, for new Arch Linux installation, it's easier to use Xorg just to get a full working system. After you have learned Arch Linux more, you can switch to Wayland. Xorg xinit and Xorg server. Press enter, type your user password. Okay, you see I forgot the option S here to install packages. If you are not sure about some of the questions, just proceed with the default ones by pressing enter and installing all the packages. Yes, it will install some extra packages which may not be necessary, but I want you to make sure that you get a working system. So when these packages are installed, we can proceed with installing the graphical desktop environment. We will use the command pacman with sudo in front of it. with option S, which means to install, I recommend to use XFCE desktop environment for Arch Linux, because XFCE is not developed as fast, it's more conservative, it's much smaller, and it is more reliable in many ways. In Arch Linux, when you constantly get new updates, because it's like bleeding edge distro in some way, and you use GNOME or KDE for example, you would often encounter some small issues which you need to fix to keep your graphical desktop environment working. While with XFCE, you don't get so many new features like every other day, and it works more consistently. So for new users, and in general I believe, XFCE is the best graphical desktop environment for Arch Linux. So I'm gonna show you how to install XFCE in this tutorial. After you have some experience, you can switch to any other desktop environment. Of course, you can install GNOME, KDE or any other desktop environment. I provide all the instructions for other desktop environment in the description of this video, in the blog post dedicated to Arch Linux installation. So go there and consult with a specific desktop environment how to install it. I prefer to use LightDM login manager. So we will install LightDM and LightDM GTK greeter. Press enter. Install all of them. When the desktop is installed, we need to create an initiation file to launch this desktop environment during the login process. To do that, you need to type echo, and for XFCE you type exec start xfce4. This is the command specific for XFCE. For other desktop environment you need to use some other commands, which are again provided in the text version of this tutorial. And it's gonna be saved into the file which is called xinitrc. Enter. So this file is created, and we also need to enable LightDM in the systemctl. Sudo systemctl enable LightDM. Let's test if our graphical environment works at all. To do that, you need to type the command startx. And as you can see, my graphical environment works. Now let's restart our system and see if it will also load during the login process. Congratulations, you have installed Arch Linux with a working graphical desktop environment. Now you can continue building up your system from this stage. And you can start with my video on things to do after installing Arch Linux that you see on your screen right now. Thank you for watching.